Hey, I'm here. I'm back, and I now have a new topic I wish to talk about. Because I have just realized this. I have figured out what the weakness of Gargoyle is. Now, some people may think that I have already discussed the weakness of Gargoyle, that he is, just like any tyrant, he is not looking at the individual, he is just looking at the goal. But the thing is, I also think I actually have the counter answer to what his weakness is. And that is kind of contradictory to the nature of tyrants. And that is his willingness to sacrifice, or his love for his bound, the one who's like bound, meant for him. And that is Light Fist. Let me just reveal him. Light Fist. He's called Arok. And Arok, he was initially he was the first to be born. Or actually, no, he wasn't the first. He was like the third or fourth to be born with gray scale. Now, when you're born, when a Draffle is born, they have a color, and at that time in the story, there were plenty of colors. The main ones were the black one, which was kinetic. There was the yellow one, which was thunder. There was the blue one, which was ice. And then there was the red one, which was fire. Or rather, it's gas, gas, solid, and then ionic and kinetic, in reverse order. Reverse respective. And, well, when someone was born with the grayscale, then like, the Tyrant could see them, but they couldn't sense them in the fourth dimension. So therefore, it was inherently built incorrect, and that's because what is it called? The horror beneath the ocean had kind of plucked. Oh well, I haven't thought about specifically why that is. Like, my initial guess is that it's because a horror kind of just plucks the hole that the elemental power is supposed to come out of, but that doesn't explain the scale, so I'll have to think about that. Or, like, what is the actual reason? Why, like, what did horror actually do? But the result is that this is a grayscale that you can't see in the fourth dimension, and the standard practice was just to execute them because it was a flawed creation. I'll return after the music. Yeah, so returning to Gakoa and Arak. So Arak, he was Arak, he you know, what was it about Arak? Arak kinda Arak was a grayscale, so therefore the practice was to just kill them because they were a flawed specimen. But the Tyrant that Arak was meant for did not accept that. It is a variant of Tyrant that thought also, though, that it was precious what it saw. It wanted that weird, abominable thing. So therefore, it thought maybe there's a way to repair it. So it kind of took and tried to infuse Arak, the little huntling at that point, with its own essence, and that didn't really lead to anything. So it effectively halved itself, trying to fix Arak without success. But even though it failed, then it came time to like start executing it. The problem was, well, there had already been put a lot of Gakoa into it, so therefore, by its very nature, it did not make sense to execute it. And in that way, Gakoa actually saved Arak from being executed. Or, like, destroyed. Because now it would be a huge loss to lose Arak. Even though they couldn't feel him. They could not sense him at all. Then, now he had a lot of essence inside of him, so therefore it didn't really make sense. And when I say essence, it is like the fourth dimensional matter that can like move around, that makes up Tyrant, which usually is like a small fragment that is put into a Dravel, which gives them their elemental powers. But in the case of and it still gives them a lot of power. The powers of a Tyrant, even when split, is still on like the astronomical level. Meanwhile, in its fullness, or in just its half or quarter or a 8/4, then it is on a cosmic level. Like cosmic powers. Shouldn't be deleting this. That was a mistake. I'm just gonna put that there and there. But there it is on a cosmic level of power. And, well, that means that now Arak effectively has what amounts to, like... The thing is that it's only half of what a Gakoa is, so that means it is effectively only terrestrial, but it's still powerful at a terrestrial level. He probably could, if there was like a meteor and he was a kinetic Dravel, he probably would be able to pull it out of orbit and then throw it onto the ground below, but only if it's like in low orbit. He wouldn't be able to drag it from the from outer space on command and then just slam it towards the surface. And that's the thing, he is not a kinetic Dravel, he's a plane scale. That means he has no element. So even though he has now all of this essence inside of him, he can't really use it for anything. Actually, there is one thing he can use it for, and later on, when his Rafik, his appointed Rafik, and then the one who's like keeping him on life support, figures out the secret, then he actually manages to get him to actually have an element, which is an unheard element. An element that has never been discovered yet. It just goes to show how smart this one Rafik is. Or rather... Yeah... no, he's not really smarter than other Rafik. He's just had a lot longer to analyze. And one topic in particular. He also has another level of affinity with Arok. Because, like, he is part of the first landing crew. He is forged by the facilities on Rafik. On the Rafik world. And therefore he is perhaps arguably of a different making. Because he was meant for an expedition, which means he has a whole new set of requirements, and the Rafik homeworld did have a lot more capabilities than Drafleon. I probably should write about that, like really consider, is the graphics on Drafleon less potent than the ones on the original Rafik world, on the Rafik homeworld? You probably consider that for a moment. I mean, yes, kind of, because like with the introduction of evil, then suddenly that was something they needed to account for. That's not really something that the original Rafiks understood at all. They couldn't grasp that. But then, how does he overcome that limitation? That's also something I have to consider. But anyways, after 1,000 years, actually 1,500 years, actually probably 1,600 years, that's when he discovers, and like has the Eureka moment, and he discovers how to unlock the elemental powers in Arok. But at this time, 1,600 years earlier than that, there it is still that Garkoa existed. He gave him half his essence and to no avail, and then logic dictates then you stop once you have given half. But at that point, it no longer made sense to execute Arok because he had so much essence, and therefore, well, Garkoa got his wish. His little abomination was allowed to live. It's not him who made it, but it was the abomination that was meant for him. Well, not an abomination, and now they are soulbound. Or that's at least what it's called. It's not actually being soulbound, because it just means that you are like connected together like brothers in blood. And like soulmates or something. But it's like a writer and the one who writes it, except that in the on Drafleon, it's kind of like the graphic that there it's kind of like the Tyrant is like the writer, and then the one who's like writing on top of it is more like the accessory, like the supporting role. The main attraction is the Tyrant, and then the one on top is just like the second dish, the one who helps the writer. So yeah, that is effectively a situation, but that means Arok has effectively half of Garkoa, and that means Garkoa is effectively half as strong as he otherwise would be. Which means that he is actually kind of weak for a Tyrant. Like, compared to a Draffle, yes, he is very powerful. He is still a Tyrant. No easy feat to destroy or defeat. But that also means that that's also something I have to consider. Does this infusion result in Arok being like more powerful in any way whatsoever? Does it make him more capable? That I have not considered, because the main power of Arok is not actually how much essence he has in him. That's just the reason why he was spared. But the actual power of Arok is his perception. His ability, his perception ability, which is like unheard of. I think, actually, to be honest, it makes more sense that it's something that horror induced him with, like a perception that even that trumps anything else. Because horror is capable of doing a lot of things, and it has observed a lot of its brother's creations, and so it knows how to perfect it, unlike Tyrant. Or like, it knows how to mess with it and attune certain parts of it so it becomes absurdly efficient. Because it doesn't matter if you're an eldritch being. If there is an eldritch being that's not as fragmented as you, then it will be able to perform better. It will be able to see opportunities that you can't even fathom. Because you are like segregated. You are just mere you're like fragmented compared to it. And so horror would definitely be able to min-max Arok to become, well, the executioner that he becomes. And yeah, I think that's therefore, yeah, it makes sense that actually the powers that Arok has is different, but or that horror simply just made him ultra powerful when it came to perception, because he can perceive the world at the heartbeat of the universe. Like, whenever the universe, like, ticks forward one time unit, that he can perceive. And the thing is, people usually believe that, oh, that's a curse. It's a curse if you perceive the world so slowly, like you will be bored to death. The thing is, this is not a human. This is not a human given this power. This is a creature that has been developed specifically with the ability to perceive the world like that and not be affected by it. To them, it is normal and comfortable having all that headspace. Their forts might also just run on a different speed, and to them it is normal. It does not get tedious. In fact, if they were suddenly given the same time perspective as us humans, that would be horrifying for them. So, like, it's a natural thing that does not affect them negatively. And it's not something they just turn off and now they perceive the world normally. No, they are in the middle of their sentences perceiving it at the beat of the heartbeat. The language also is a very, like, slow one. It doesn't need urgency or anything in it. It's not about that, really. The body is still bound by their normal speed. But that is also where Krakoa is a bit unique, because he has the perception that equates to the heartbeat of the universe as a potential. He did perceive also time fairly slowly to begin with, but like, he can train this ability to be even more, and he does so, eventually becoming able to perceive the heartbeat of the universe. as each element ticks, he has 1 fort. And he can do this because, well, his entire body is a brain, so therefore there's immediate reaction. That's how the Dreffel functions. The only thing is that the reaction time, that's bound by, well, whatever it was, horror tampered with. I probably also should think about that. What is it actually he did? But that is something I need to decipher. What is it actually he did to him? But anyways, that also means that it is a lot easier for A-Rock to actually defeat his kin. And also the thing is, later on, he does get a hang of something about his ability. Because he is, after all, an abomination by the fact that they can't sense him at all. Like they can see him, but they can't sense him. And the thing is, that I also need to develop. Is it because they know that he is supposed to have like half a tyrant worth of essence in him, and yet he's still completely invisible? That drives the tyrants crazy, or like makes them this uncomfortable? Or is it that or is it that what was it I was about to say? Is that the problem, or is the problem that he simply is or is there some, like, you can feel that you can't feel him, and that makes them uncomfortable? Or is it that they are kind of maddened by the fact that he is an abomination? Regardless, he does use the part where he can't be seen very effectively, because, for one, he moves later on very quickly at the speed of, well, at the speed of sound, and punches at the speed of light, which means that if you can't sense him in the 4th dimension, how do you react to him? And also, oh, I remember now. Oh, I remember now. Oh, I remember now why it is uncomfortable. Actually, let's just do this. No, let's not do that. Oh, I forgot some dirt. Oh, where the flip hammer? Right, so I remember now. It is because the fact that he does not have an essence, or that you can't see his essence. And I'll just remain quiet while I'm doing this. Just for the editor's sake. If there is an editor. Bam. Alright. The reason why, well, what kind of element he's using there, it's because the fact that they can't, and a tyrant may use the elemental powers to, like, grasp at a Dreffel and kind of influence them. That's also what they do against some of the Dreffels later on in the story, like once they return again. But like against A-Rock, there is nothing to grasp. There is nothing to grasp. They can kind of fathom that there is something huge, enormous, on the size of them, equivalent to a Titan, if a bit smaller, but like size relatively to how small he is, then it's like astronomical. Like the concentration is really, ooh, like it's horridly condensed. But once it grasps out to like yank it or take it, or touch it, there is nothing to touch. And it's kind of feels horrible to them. It feels terribly unnatural even. And that is usually something that turns off all the tyrants, and that's what makes Gargoyle special, because okay, so Tyrant started as... I need to explain what Tyrant is in order for this to make sense. Tyrant is everything. Tyrant is all that could be. All ideals put into a beast that can... or into an entity that can do whatever it wish. And because it wish all, then there is not really possible to understand what it actually wills. It was created with a certain purpose, and so the first thing it did was to drag stars from all across the universe, particular stars that it wanted, onto a planet where it then stood to rest for eternity. Then came life on that planet under those suns. But it is also... part of it was fragmented off very early on, and that landed onto the ground in a hill, in a circle of mountains, which is later known as Hataka, which is the forest. And it observed life spring up, and so it nurtured it and helped it on its way, because it was a hostile environment to life. And eventually it grew up, and once Tyrant saw life, it was split, because one part of it found it abominable to its goals, while the other found it intriguing, and so nurtured it. And that's when... Alright, fine. We gotta respect Minecraft's music. It's much better than this story. Yeah, so about that. So when life came, then Tyrant was the entity was split, because it had two different stances upon what should be of life. One wanted it eradicated, that became horror. Other part saw it as beautiful, that became Tyrant. And because life comes in many different forms, and life not being life comes in very few forms, it meant that the half that valued life over time fractured into preferences and such, all having the main factor that all life is good as their main follow. Some wish to become life, and they became. And, well, as essence, most of them liked life as was. Well, they were fine not being life, and they became other things. I don't actually know what they became, so that I should probably also consider. That's also a note to myself. I need to think about that. Man, the story has become all about Tyrant and horror. And so, but the gist of it is, regardless of what I end up deciding, is that that horror stayed mostly intact. Actually, just stayed intact until later on in the story, where it deemed that in order to make life not and prevent disaster, then it needed to split itself up into multiple different agents with the same goal. But that's another story, and it never fully fractured. Like, the majority of itself was centered in horror, and pieces of it would always try to come back to its original form once their tasks were completed. But regardless of whatever it is, the Tyrant effectively just became smaller and smaller pieces of the thing that was once one whole. Now, it didn't split fast, and also it started to stagnate, and the goal was to eventually end up not having to split anymore once they were content, or it were content. You kind of have to switch between singular and plural when you talk about horror, because it is one entity spread across multiple beings. And it is distinctly different from all other life, because it is still itself. It can perhaps emulate what other beings are. And I just broke a stone. That's poor stone. May you rest in peace. We'll do this as a memorial. But no, we are gonna have a silence for the rock we lost. It's not every day you lose a rock. And this was a good rock. Anyway, horror then... Anyway, so horror never actually split, but Tyrant did. And one of these splits were Gakoa. Like, he is one of the later splits. Like, at the time of the story, Gakoa is just... It's not been long since he's been hatched. And once the story about Arok, the first book, starts, then yeah, already there, he can still be beneath the he can still be inside the forest. He's not so big that he's gonna turn over trees and such, which was the main reason why the first the walks were developed, and then the travels were made, which then also became a side project of Love. But effectively, that means that... Why was I even talking about this to begin with? Did I make sure to turn... Yeah, I did. Okay. Hang on, I'm just gonna rewatch so I can see why I started talking about this even. Right. I was talking about why Gakoa is special, why he doesn't feel creeped out by A-Rock having this aura of sorts, or this ability where he feels weird, that caused the other ones to want him dead. Well, see, he is a fragment of Tyrant, which is not unionized to the rest of them. He is one that believes that this life that somehow is able to... I broke a pickaxe. That's not... He believes that... Flip the pickaxe. But Gakoa, he believes that this is a very interesting phenomena. This life that can't be detected, can't be felt, even though we have imbued it with the essence of us. Why can't we feel him? Why can't we sense him? Why can I only see him? And that intrigued Gakoa. That was like his fragment. The fragment of the original entity that valued this weird nature, the oddity, the thing that does not make sense. Is that fragment. And the parts he imbued into A-Rock, that was the part that perhaps were a little bit skeptical over this or something, which effectively made him only have the part that saw like intrigue and wonder in A-Rock being undetectable and being weird and not having any emotions. That just intrigued him. There was only the part left in him that was intrigued and found it good that this entity was different and odd and an abomination. So that means Gakoa genuinely values weird, odd things for all they are. And it's also... So therefore it protected fiercely that... Therefore, if it before valued A-Rock as a creature, then it does so even more now. There's also the fact that it could also just have split. Like, Gakoa could just have split right then and there. I might have to consider if that's what happened. That would actually make a lot more sense that Gakoa then and there split. And then he kind of forced. And then the two parts of him fought against each other. Like an internal fierce battle. And then the part that actually valued the oddity, the strangeness of this raffle, kind of just took this other part of him, just took this part that despised this odd, abominable thing, and then he took that part and just shoved it into A-Rock to, like, give him more essence than normal. Because the personality of the essence that's induced into a raffle has no influence whatsoever on their personality, but it has a definitive effect on the personality of a tyrant. So I think actually that might make more sense that that's what happened. And that means that now Gakoa deeply values what is strange and odd and weird and abominable, but only once it's like strange and incomprehensible to them, or at least where it is they can't even create an illusion that they understand it. Because as mentioned before, tyrants don't actually feel in that way, or they don't... What was it again I said? they might be able to feel, but there is no response to what they feel. They don't react upon what they feel, they react upon what they deem to be good, or be what they deem to be right. Most often taking the most effective path to that. And when this part split in Garcoa, it would actually make sense that it saw the most effective way to induce that this Arok does not get terminated is to make him so valuable, because he holds a lot of essence, that they can't kill him realistically. And so he did that. So that's actually the first murder that Garcoa did on Tyrant. The first time he actually killed a Tyrant, or part of Tyrant, to further his goal. Because that's the great thing about Garcoa. He goes out of his way to actually betray another Tyrant later on in the story of the first book, mind. He actually goes out of his way to betray a Tyrant to further his goals, or like what he deems as right. Because this part that finds accepting in abominable things would also be very much lenient towards the discarded, the outcasts and such. And once that part of him sees that the Vanox are also being mistreated, or rather that they are effectively also outcast, abominable things, he grows some fondness towards them and determines the most effective path to preserve that. Now it's no longer an individual, now it's a people, so that makes sense why he makes life absolute. It makes life miserable for that one Vanox for the sake of the other Vanox as a whole. It makes sense that he was nice to Arok, but not to the Vanox in question. I'm saying a bunch of nonsense right here, but me, it makes a lot of sense, and now I just need to know how. Now I just need to figure out how to put it into writing. I can see the story for me right now here. It is forming as I'm talking about it, and I realize there are a lot of aspects about the most interesting part, that being Tyrant, that I just haven't thought through thoroughly enough. I might need to do an entire, new document about Tyrant specifically. I have a lot of other things. I have about humanity and what their, political system is working. Like, maybe not the political side and how they vote and such, but like what kind of people that is in the different parts of the story. Or at least it's very easy to reverse engineer what it is. For example, the first story, I know it is a cancel, and that's because it's one guy who did all the stuff, and then he declares war, and he's the master, and in order to turn it over, they have to deal with him. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, I realized later on, but that's the details. In that specific case, it is actually the Chancellor's brother who is offended by the fact that his stubborn idiot of a brother got the position of Chancellor. But there it is that he has failed to realize that it is that the reason why he did not get it, despite being the perfect one, the reason why he didn't get it, the position, is because unlike his brother, who was an absolute failure to begin with, but then later on became actually a great person, he himself, the brother who's jealous, he has not improved at all. He has been the same person from start to finish. And that lack of growth, that just doesn't make for a good, dynamic leader. But that the jealous brother can't comprehend, so therefore he's jealous of his brother getting in position. So therefore he does this entire scheme where he gets the Draffles to he gets all the connections to the Chancellor, he gets a bunch of stuff, he sets up good communications with the Draffles, and then he at some point just stops. And he makes sure that the Draffles are just feeling ignored, and they get more and more agitated, and it's all directed towards the Chancellor. And so, once the day comes to a head in the third book, which is technically in the first book, which is technically the third book chronologically, there it is that the entire scene unfolds, and he does the final death blow to the relationship. Because he knows how they're gonna react, he gets them to react, and his brother almost catches him. But there's a very tempered Draffle, and the rest of the people not knowing, then the guards take a shot to like warn the Draffle that, hey, you shouldn't step closer. But the Draffle doesn't know it's a warning shot, so he dodges out of the way straight into the line of fire, and the humans did not anticipate that he would react that fast. That means now the shot actually lands, but it doesn't land on a Draffle. Nothing would have happened if it landed on a Draffle. The Draffle would have survived, but it hits the Raffic on his shoulder. And oh dear, all hell breaks loose. But like, yeah, I can decipher all these other things. I have them in very deep detail, and I can give a very good accounting of all of these other things. But I realized I haven't really given Tyrant the level of thought that I need to. But then again, I haven't really had to develop that part of the story. But the problem is also, I really want to do Tyrant. I really want to do Tyrant first. But the problem is, it doesn't make sense to write a story about Tyrant as the first thing. Or maybe it does. Like, it is the most compelling story. It is the one where we have the most creatures that are like valuable, but at the same time, it just sparks into a golden age that we probably shouldn't know about before the telling of where humanity is, and also the tellings about where humanity is there is more important for the Prime Directive, which is to convince you that humanity is inherently evil. Meanwhile, the other story, that's a great one, but it won't achieve the Prime Directive. And also the fact I have written most of the other stories, like most of book 3 and 4. I've written book 4 fully. I just need to edit it through, which is a nightmare. And the book 3, there are segments I still need to write. I have had a long break. Oh dear, I'm getting hoarse. I'm getting hoarse. I might not talk tomorrow because, like, oh dear, my throat is my throat's bad. But yeah, I'm tempted to just start writing that story. Oh, okay, I should probably not talk more. Oh dear. But yeah, I have a lot to talk about. And I can't wait till the day where I actually get to tell it. But yeah, so, just a note to myself. I need to write about psychopaths in bikers. I need to write about Tyrant, and like the part where it puts in the essence into a rock in a very large amount. I need to write about like what actually caused a rock to be able to perceive the world so quickly as he could. And I also need to talk about how, like, the emptiness, how a Tyrant sees and feels a plane scale, and how they usually feel a elemental draffle. Because they can also use that to manipulate. And I also have to consider, what does that mean for when the main character, like the prophecy, or not the prophecy, but like the destined draffle fights Tyrants. Because he's very much a plane scale, but he also has an element. Which is... I can't talk about that right now. How do the graphics react to it? Well, I already know that they have a perfect body, so therefore they wouldn't be able to touch them. But yeah, I need to talk about... And like the internal battle where he just shoves the essence into a rock. And like why the Tyrants can't just kill off a rock. Because it's weird. There's a lot I need to talk about, and there's a lot I need to write about. I can probably first do that tomorrow. I don't really have time for it today. I'll have to leave now. Do stuff. Need to start the day, get a lot of stuff done. Finally have the essence of how I am. Going to do work. Yeah. Let me just do. Oh dear me, there's stuff here. Alright, done. Oh wait, there's still one more thing I need to do. Over here. Let's just do. That's good. Oh yeah. Talking about Minecraft. Talking about Minecraft. Talking about Minecraft. I'm gone now. I'm gonna disappear. Goodbye. Talking about Minecraft.